Here is another hand from the 2024 main event World Series of Poker final table. 8 players remain, 1.25 million guaranteed for 8th, 10 million for first, and the next pay jump is up to 1.5 million. So another $250,000 on the line if players can survive one more elimination. Our chip leader opens the ace jack of clubs. Very reasonable open. An actual real hand in a spot where he might be raising a lot of combos here just from the cutoff to put pressure on his opponents. In the blinds, you can see players are sitting on about 20 big blinds for Tamayo, 16 for Gonzalez, and 35 for Segal. Tamayo folds the button, Gonzalez folds the small blind, and Segal with king, queen in the big blind. Pretty strong hand versus a cutoff open, especially versus a chip leader. So it's not surprising to see him continue with a call. Some of the time you might want to be 3-betting this, but I actually think that in this situation, calling is better. You don't want to be 3-bet folding this sort of a hand. And if you expect Griff to be raising a lot of weird, weak combinations, by calling, you actually keep those in his range. And so you keep in a dominated queen or a dominated king that would fold to a 3-bet, right? So if it comes king 4-3 or queen 8-5 and your opponent has a queen 6 or a king 10, you now stand to win a big, big pot compared to if you just 3-bet and they fold. Additionally, you're actually trying to play smaller pots here overall, but that is not a flop you're looking to play a small pot with. Segal flops the second nuts. Kings would be pretty nasty, but he feels pretty good. Griff, he checks it to Griff, which is the right play. You definitely want to be checking on this sort of a texture. Out of the big blind, I would argue you want to check most of your range, and on this texture, 100% of it. Griff bets 2 million into 11. I don't mind the size. I think actually going small here is very reasonable. You're not making better hands fold, but, you might get some value from worse, jack 10s, ace 10s, etc. And Segal was just a call. I like Segal's play. This will be the final street where I like everyone's play. Again, Griff betting small on the flop, totally fine. Segal calling flop, also fine. Could you have some raises here? Yeah, you could. I don't know what your bluff raises are going to be. It's an interesting spot to talk about potential bluff raises. Maybe a 10, 9 of spades. Maybe a jack, 9 of clubs. But I think with king, queen, especially having this board locked up, it's better just to check call. And remember, Segal is up against the chip leader, who is undoubtedly trying to apply pressure to the opponents at the table because they want to make $250,000 extra. And Segal in this spot, out of the 3 players who could have defended versus Griff's raise, Tamayo with 40 million, Gonzalez with 32 million, Segal has the most chips of all 3. And so he actually is a player who I think Griff would be most willing to apply pressure to because Segal has the most to lose, right? He doesn't want to go from having 70 million chips to 0 when he could have outlasted these other 2 guys and gotten extra money. So anyway, Griff bets, Segal calls. Let's go to a turn where things get off the rails. 5 on the turn. Pretty nothing card. And Segal thinks about it here. Now, there are some leads out of the big blind on some flops, turns, or rivers. That is a thing in poker theory world. It is not a thing on a 5 of hearts turn on king, queen, 5. Typically, you want to have leads in spots where you have a range advantage, right? So perhaps if the flop was 9, 6, 5 and the turn is a 7, you would say, hey, I'm in the big blind. I have more 8s in my range than you do, or pre-flop raiser. I'm going to bet this turn, right? I also would have more 2 pair or whatever. On this board, that's just not the case, right? The pre-flop raiser still has a very strong advantage. You expect pre-flop raiser to have hands like ace, king, aces, kings, queens, ace, queen. And so because of that, I don't like Segal's decision to lead here. I will say this, though. The theory world and the practical world are very different places. So let's pretend that Sago believes, you know what? I think if I bet small here, Griff is going to see it as weakness and he's going to make a move at this pot. Then you know what? By all means, go for it. Like, poker theory is not the end all be all of how you should play hands. There's obviously still a human element, and how people react to how you bet or don't bet is very important in determining what you should do. So I don't like the bet from Sagal, but let's see if it gets Griff to do something funny. And he does. Griff now raised to 8 million. So I didn't like Sagal's bet, but it seems to have worked here. He's gotten Griff to raise a hand that should never raise. And I'm not saying you can never have bluffs here in Griff's spot. I think you could. I think if you interpret the bet on the turn as weak and you want to have bluff raises here, that's fine. I would say that Ace-Jack is not the hand I would use. Because if you're trying to bluff with Ace-Jack, are you trying to move them off a king? Is that the whole goal? I mean, it's tough to pull people off top pair here for this small size, right? I think if I'm Griff and I have a hand like 6-4 of hearts, right? A hand that's surely the worst hand, but it has some equity. Maybe I could do that. I mean, really, if I'm Griff and I'm bluffing here, I want to have a hand that's so weak that I know it's not the best hand. And Ace-Jack could still actually be the best hand. Getting a good price, I would just call. And Sagal has a decision. I think it's a pretty clear one. I think he should just call. Because if Griff is bluffing, you want him to keep bluffing. You get value by letting him continue to bluff. And it's a spot where, as a chip leader, he might look to apply a lot of pressure to you. And you have the effective nuts. It's a great spot for you just to call, and what the fuck is happening? And Sagal 3-bets 21 million and Griff folds. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Because you're not giving your opponent a chance to bluff, which is how you get a lot of value in this spot. When you have the nuts, when you have the board crushed, you want to give your opponent a chance to bluff because that's how you can actually get paid. By making this raise here, Griff has to have a hand that's really, really, really good, but worse than yours. So Griff has to have a hand like Queen-Jack, which is unlikely when you have a Queen. Queen-10, same thing. Maybe Ace-King. I mean, Ace-King might just fold. Pocket fives. Sure, he could have pocket fives, but guess what happens if you just call and he has pocket fives? On almost all rivers, he bets again and you get paid. So if Griff has a really strong hand here, chances are you're going to get the money in anyway. A Queen-Jack, an Ace-Queen, a pocket fives. If Griff has a very weak hand here, calling gives you the best chance to get the money in, because then he might bluff. He might have a hand like the 6-4 of hearts that will probably fold to this flop 3-bet, because how does Sagal have a bluff that bets flop small, gets raised, and re-raises? But maybe if Sagal just calls, Griff has the 6-4 of hearts, river's a heart, and then fireworks, right? So it's rare that I see a poker hand where there are 4 things I didn't like. Bet, flop, raise. 3 things I didn't like. I mean, that happens. 3 things I don't like. Three decisions. It's even rare I see all 3 decisions on the same street. I think if Sagal would have just called, he gives himself a great chance to get 15 to 20 to 30 million more chips in this tournament by letting Griff bluff the river, and he just missed out on a golden opportunity.